from the window. You left the window open.
No, I closed it. I don't know where. I closed my door.
Check your window is open. Do you want to join the NISCOM program? They started.
No.
You don't want. Check you want to. I want you to.
Record it?
Yeah, I'm recording for them. I just on it. I can go and pay. I will just leave it to the continue. Just go and pay. And just let it continue.
You know what?
Can everyone hear me? Assalamu alaikum. Doctor, can you hear me? Alhamdulillah. Yeah. All right. We greet ourselves a wonderful afternoon, and we hope we are actually enjoying the reading section. Alhamdulillah, I'm going to be the moderator and also probably the anchor for this workshop, inshallah. We welcome ourselves for this to this particular workshop. We pray that we're able to get the most out of it, inshallah. Our doctor is right on ground, alhamdulillah. He's also our instructor for today. He's Assistant Professor Dr. Haruna Jayeoba. He is from International Institute for Halal Research and Training, that is INHAT, at the International Islamic University of Malaysia. Shortly, inshallah, he would start his discourse with us. The topic, as we have known, is choosing and writing our research methodology. We hope we can benefit more from his presentation, inshallah. As a kind reminder, once again, we want ourselves to please try as much as possible to mute our mics and probably maybe a video too, so that we can enjoy the presentation very well. Doctor, we welcome you to our midst. If you are ready, we are okay to listen to you. Assalamu alaikum warahmatullahi
wabarakatuh. Thank you very much, Mr. President, and thank you, NISCOM, for the invitation, and thank you everyone for joining this discussion. Of course, my name is Haruna Jayeoba, as rightly said. And inshallah, today I will be discussing, presenting on how we can select research methodology or research design for our research, and how we can write it. Inshallah, of course, I want to finish the discussions as soon as possible because I have other commitment around 3:30 to 4. So please, I will enjoy everyone to please try to be patient with me when I discuss, and at the same time, if you have any questions, you can send to the chat group here, and I'm very sure Mr. President will be here to call my attention if I don't see the comment. Inshallah, I will start my presentation now. Then after that, I can just start speaking.
You can begin, sir.
Okay, sir. Can you see my slide?
We can, sir.
Okay. As I've mentioned, I will be discussing about how to choose and write research methodology. The discussion outline or the presentation outline for today will be a brief introduction. Then I will move on to research methodology and research design. Then I will discuss about factors affecting selection of a research design, which is at the same time research methodology in this case, and how to select an appropriate research methodology, and how to write a good enough research methodology. Okay, I'm moving on to the introduction. Having determined that you know something about or you identify a problem in the society, what telling some other people or what researching? The common questions faced by the researcher, particularly the young researchers like me, myself, is how do I select an appropriate approach and procedures to write a chapter containing such research methodology? Because of course, when you want to carry out the research, the number one thing you have to do is to select the research idea. And then after you have selected your idea, that is the areas that you want to write your research, then the next thing is how you want to approach that particular problem. And this is commonly the problem among the researchers, especially the young researchers, as I've mentioned, like myself and uh, some of us here, like my colleagues here. So as the discussions here today focuses on making decisions to select one or two research approaches and to actually know how to write such approach or research methodology when we want to approach or address the research problem that we have identified. So because our discussions today is actually about research methodology and research design itself, then I think it's important for me to start to define what is research methodology and what is research design. Then from there, we'll be able to move on to other pertinent discussions. So research methodology here is a systematic way to solve a problem. The first thing is for you to identify the problem. So after you have identified the problem, then you want to use an appropriate or systematic research methodology to solve that problem. So it is a procedures by which researchers go about their work or describing, about their work of describing, explaining, and predicting phenomenon. So after you have identified the problem, then the next thing for you is how you want to address it. So the research problem actually will help you to itemize and to discuss the approach that you will use to solve such a problem. And when it comes to research design, the research design plans and the procedures for research that plan the decisions from broad assumptions to detailed method of data collection and data analysis. So the issue here when we talk about research design is actually how you want to structure your research methodology, which actually begin from your research assumptions. What assumptions have you subscribe to when you want to carry out your research? Then after that, you have to discuss the method of data collection, then the method of data analysis. So the research design is actually about the structure of your research methodology and the research in particular. Then the research methodology is a systematic way to solve the problem that you have identified. So when we discuss about research design, we're actually talking about three aspects of it. And the first one is qualitative research design. The second one is quantitative research design, and the third one is mixed method research design. So coming up to the qualitative research design, this is actually carried out when we wish to understand the meaning of a particular things. I want to look at how people actually behave or how people actually do things or describe or understand the experiences of people and or to find out about the ideas about how people do things, their beliefs and their values. So this is basically how the way to address the qualitative research. When you want to find out about the behavior of people, you want to know about the experiences of people, you want to find out about the ideas on how to do things, the beliefs. That is where and when you can use qualitative research. And qualitative research is rich in that regard because it actually allows you to know how people actually go about their daily lives or do a particular things. Then when we come to the quantitative research, this is carried out to test objective theories by explaining the relationship among variables. So here you will need to have the, you will need to identify the variables that you would like to approach, to use and carry out your research. Then after that, you can say you want to, prepare your research instrument, which in this case will be questionnaire. Then you can use it to find out about how to do, to carry out this kind of research. So these variables in turn can be measured typically on instrument so that number that can be analyzed using statistical procedure. So when you identify the variables that are important in your study, then you can, design the questionnaire. Then you can use the questionnaire to collect your data. Then based on the data you collected, you can do the analysis. So the quantitative is actually looking at the numbers, and the relationship, the causation between variables. And it is different from qualitative research, which actually want to know how people do things or want to find out about the behavior of people or their experiences. So then the last one is a mixed method research design, which is the approach to inquiry that combines or associates both qualitative and quantitative forms of research design. So in this case, actually, mixed method is just like, in the middle position between the qualitative and quantitative, because it's actually combined the characteristic of both aspects. And if you want to carry out the research, people actually advocate to use this method, which is mixed method, because it actually helps you to eliminate the problems or the deficiencies in each of these research design. For example, qualitative research. When you carried out qualitative research, one of the problems that people used to identify is that you are using very limited number of respondents, because usually the maximum you can go in most cases is you go to 30 or 20 or 25. But when you carry out quantitative research, of course, you you want to collect more data from different people, and in this case, people used to criticize qualitative research that is a research with just a limited number of respondents. So, but if you combine both qualitative and quantitative, it will actually help you to eliminate such criticisms, because you want to, maybe in some cases, you want to use qualitative to support your quantitative, or you want to use your quantitatives to support your qualitative. So both of them, the qualitative and quantitative have their deficiencies, but when you try to mix them together, then you'll be able to eliminate some of the deficiencies in each of them. So this mixed method research design involves philosophical assumptions, the use of qualitative and the quantitative and mixing of both approaches in a study. So when you mixed qualitative research design, of course, your discussions will start from the assumptions that you have to make, and then to discuss research design from both sides, and at the same time, while you are mixing both together. Of course, research is all about justifications. Once you are able to find justification for doing research, then you are a bit safe from the angle of examiners. So moving on to the factors affecting selection of your research design. Of course, there are so many factors that could affect your research design, but the prominent or the popular ones that we used to discuss when we are talking about factors affecting our selection of research design, then we talk about all these things here. So number one, your philosophical worldview will actually affect the kind of research methodology. Is there any question there?
You can continue. I'll mute him now. Sorry.
Okay, okay. I thought there is a question for me. Okay. Um, one of the factors that affect the selection of a research design is your philosophical worldview. So here, the way you feel a particular problems is the way you want to solve it. And this one is actually related to so many things. Here you'll be talking about, the ontology, which is the nature of the reality. Of course, the existence of things. Then you talk about the epistemology, that is the sources of knowledge. How have you come about the knowledge that you want to approach? Then you talk about anxiology, which is the values. Is it going to be value free or value dependent? Or you talk about methodology. Is it going to be qualitative or quantitative? So your philosophical worldview about the problems that you want to solve will actually play a long way in the selection of research design. Then the number two here is the strategy of inquiry or the research methods that you know use. So the strategies to carry out the research. For example, if you want to carry out quantitative research methodology, you want to use quantitative research methodology, and you think that you are familiar with how to plan your experiment, for example. So if you know how to do the experimental research, then you are likely to use to conduct quantitative research. And if you are somehow familiar with how to use survey questionnaire, for example, as well, you are likely to conduct quantitative research. And if you're familiar with narrative method of approach, then you are likely to conduct qualitative research. And if you know the concurrent and the sequential approach to data collection, you are likely to carry out mixed method research. So the approaches, I mean, the strategies and the research method that are actually known to you will affect the kind of method that you use in your research. Then at the same time, the research problem that you wish to solve. So in most cases, we have different kind of problems that we want to use our research to solve. But in a situation whereby you want to actually see how people behave. For example, in my case, during my PhD, I was trying to see, in addition to quantitative research, I want to also see how stock market investors actually behave, how they carried out their investment decisions. So if you want to know how people actually do things, then the problem you want to solve here is that you want to understand the behavior or their experiences. So in that case, you are likely to carry out qualitative research. And in a situation whereby you discover that there is no much information about the problem that you want to carry out. So you don't know any particular theory that you can use in that regard, or you don't know any variables that can help you to measure the relationship. So in that case, you can carry out qualitative research. So the kind of problem at hand will also suggest the kind of method we can use to perform to carry out our research. Then in a situation whereby you want to see the relationship between variables. Let's say in your research you want to make use of a particular theory. For example, the common theory in the management is a theory of planned behavior, which is TDB. So if you want to use some of the variables suggested by this theory, of course, you can carry out quantitative research. So in so many circumstances of such nature where you know that okay, this problem is actually related or relevant to this particular research methodology, then you can use such research methodology. But in a situation whereby even though you want to carry out research to find out about how people do things, and at the same time, you also want to know the relationship between variables after you have collected and analyzed the qualitative research. Then, in that case, you can also, you can perform mixed method research design. So, the kind of problems that you want to solve will actually dictate the kind of methodology that you should use in that regard. Then, another thing here is your personal experiences and training. So, the experiences you have with regard to the data collection, the experiences you have with regard to the data analysis, the experiences you have with regard to writing research will actually influence the kind of method you use when you want to do your research. So let's say, for example, we are here in IIUM. We know that SLEU in most cases used to organize, different trainings on how to perform research. So if you have attended training, organized by SLEU, for example, then if for example you have attended training, on how to use SPSS, on how to use SEM, which is structural equation modeling, and some quantitative research trainings of such nature, then in that case, you are going to make use of quantitative research because you know that you have experiences and you have training, you know how to use some of this software. Then those will actually, influence the kind of research methodology that you are going to take, to choose for your research. Then at the same time, the psychological attributes. Sometimes we just discover that, okay, I just like to do qualitative research, for example, maybe, or maybe I just like to do quantitative research, research. So if your preference is on a particular, a particular research methodology, like I just have preference for this, I don't like the other one. I like the other one, I don't like this. So such assumptions will actually affect what you are going to select between different competing research methodology. Then another one is the audience. The audience who are going to evaluate your research, the audience who are going to read your research, the journal editors, all these people will actually determine the kind of research you are going to perform. So if you are going to write research, for example, you want to write research for your supervisor, then your supervisor told you that, okay, I want you to produce quantitative research because I can only support you if you carry out quantitative research in your PhD or during your master's. Then you know that, okay, the audience in this case, which is your supervisor, will actually play a long way in the kind of the methodology you will select for your research. Then the focus of the study will also affect the kind of research methodology you should use when you choose when you want to do your research. Let's say you want to find out about the people's experiences. Let's say you want to find out about, you want to use figure crunching to carry out your research. So the focus of the research that you want to carry out also will play a long way in the kind of the methodology you select for your research. So after that, so how do you now select an appropriate research methodology for your research? So number one thing that you have to take into consideration is your philosophical assumption, which is your philosophical worldview. As I've mentioned in above here, that all these things are really important when you want to select. So they will also play a long way, a major role when you have to select a kind of methodology. That number one thing is just the philosophical assumption. So here, are you going to be a positivist or you are going to be interpretivist? In a situation whereby you are positivist, then everyone just know that you are going to carry out quantitative research. But if you are interpretivist, then we know that you are going to carry out qualitative research. Or if you belong to programmatist, then we know that you are going to carry out mixed method research. You are going to make use of mixed method research design. So the number one thing when you want to do the research is to identify the kind of assumption you are going to make for your research in relation to the ontological assumption, the epistemological assumption, and the methodology and axiology, and all sorts of things like that. So the number one thing is for you to identify where do you belong to. Do you belong to quantitative side? Do you belong to qualitative side? Or do you belong to both? So the aspect that you belongs to will actually play a long way in the kind of what and how you should write your research. So if you know that you are qualitative, then it's better to write with respect to qualitative, and you should select the qualitative in that regard. Then number two here is to select based on the strategies of inquiries and research methods known to you. So if you know how to prepare questionnaire, for example, then you know how to approach people to collect quantitative data, and you know how to write qualitative research. Then the approach here is for you to just choose quantitative research, and at the same time, when you know how to perform certain certain analysis, then go a long way to select that particular methodology where you think you know how to to perform the analysis on the data collected. So the approaches and the research methods that are known to you actually should actually should actually guide you when you want to select an appropriate research methodology. Then when it comes to research problem, uh, here I said select qualitative when little information exists about the problems that you would like to address, and use quantitative when substantial body of literature exists and the variables are known. So in a situation whereby you discover that there are little information about a particular problem, or you don't know a particular theory that you can use to support your research, or you just realize that there are no variables to use in your study. So all these problems that you have identified, I've already told you that you should actually carry out qualitative research. But in a situation whereby you know that there are existence of information, substantial information. You know the variables you can use to address the problems. You know that there are theories that you can use to to guide your studies. Then in that case you should carry out quantitative research, and you should select quantitative research. Then at the same time, select based on your experiences and training. So if you know that you have experiences in qualitative research, why not? You can just select qualitative research. And if you know you don't have experiences in qualitative, but you have in quantitative, why not? You can just carry out quantitative research. Or you know that the trainings are available in your vicinity. So for example, in UIA, every time people will be conducting, workshops on how to use SPSS, they will conduct workshop on how to use SEM. They conduct workshop on all sorts of quantitative, data analysis software. So because of that, because you know that here you can, every time you can find you can find people to train you on how to make use of a particular software to carry out your analysis, then that will guide you to, that should actually told you that you should carry out quantitative research. Or maybe your supervisor told you that, okay, you can just collect your data. I'll help you to manage the analysis because I can do quantitative data analysis. So, but I cannot do qualitative data analysis. So in that case, you should select quantitative data, quantitative methodology. Then your philosophical attribute, such as your preferences or likes, should also guide you. If you know, if by nature you just like quantitative research, then you should just go for quantitative research because we know and I know that there's some people that they don't just like mathematics. When you talk about figures, they don't want to they don't want to involve themselves in figures. I could still remember some couple of years back when I was discussing with one of my friends from another country. Then he told me that please I want you to guide me to write my to carry out my research, but please don't talk about quantitative research. Then I told him that okay, you can only do qualitative research when you if you don't want to do quantitative. So all these things will play a long way in the kind of things, in the when you want to select an appropriate methodologies. Then you can select based on your audience, such as the graduate committees, the journal editors, journal readers, conference attendees, or colleagues in the field. So all these people are the audience of your research, and you can actually select based on what you think will actually satisfy them. Then the last one here is that you can select qualitative. If you If you're searching for meaning based on participants' preference, but qualitative if you are actually trying to find causal relationship or you want to see the relationship between variables. So coming up to writing a good enough research methodology. This one is, of course, what I'm going to present here is similar to what I've discussed in some other times, but of course I've tried to incorporate some other important aspect of it. So, but of course, when you want to write good enough research methodology, of course, Sandra's 2015 actually developed what they call research onion. So the research onion should actually guide you when you want to write your research methodology. And going by this research onion, which is currently what you are seeing, actually start with research philosophy. So the number one thing that you have to write when you want to write your research methodology is to write your philosophical worldview or research paradigm, as people used to call it. So you have to let us know which angle you are coming from. Are you coming from positivism angle? Are you coming from interpretivism, interpretivism angle, or you are coming from pragmatism? So you need to let us know which angle you are coming from. Then also you need to also discuss the approach to to your theory development. So if you want to conduct quantitative research design, then we know that the approach to your theory development will be deduction. So in this case, you have to review the literature. You have to, based on the literature you reviewed, you have to determine the hypothesis. Based on the hypothesis you have determined, you have to collect data and you have to analyze your data. And based on the analysis, you can then conclude whether your findings support the hypothesis or it does not support the hypothesis you have itemized. Then after that, you can, if you want to carry out qualitative, for example, as well, then the approach to theory development will be induction. So in this case, you will collect your data first, you do your analysis, then after that, you will develop a theory. Then based on your theory, you can make assumptions on your hypothesis. So the qualitative is actually induction in the sense that it actually after you have analyzed and get your findings before you can go before you can make any theory or hypothesis development. Then the last one, which is abduction, which in this case this one here, the abduction actually is when the researcher go back and forth between the induction and abduction because you are mixing the two together, which is the mixed method research. When you mix the two together, then you will be in abduction where you move back and forth between the deduction and abduction. Then yeah, you have to discuss the methodological choice that you are going to that you have to make use in your research. Are you going to make use of mono-method quantitative, whereby you just make use of just a method in the quantitative research? For example, you just use questionnaire to collect data and you do the analysis. Or are you going to make use of mono-method qualitative, whereby you just develop the questions and you collect based on the you use interview to collect your data and do the analysis? Or are you going to make use of multi-method quantitative, whereby you have so many methods in a particular approach of quantitative? For example, you can set up experiment and at the same time use survey questionnaire to collect your data, and after that you can do the analysis and get your findings there. Or maybe you want to use multi-method qualitative, whereby for example you can use maybe observations and use interview. Then after that you can do the analysis and report your findings. Or maybe you are going to mix method simple. So if you are mixing just one approach of qualitative and another approach of qualitative together, then it's just like simple mixed method. Let's say you use interview to collect qualitative data, and you use software questionnaire to collect quantitative data. So in that case, you're actually mixing simple method of qualitative and quantitative. Then the last one here is mixed method complex, where you mix series of method from qualitative and quantitative. Then after this, you have to discuss your research strategies. So the strategy here, are you going to make use of experiment to collect your data? Are you going to make use of software questionnaire to collect your data? Are you going to make use of archival research, case study, ethnography, action research, blended theory, or narrative inquiry? So you have to discuss which of these you have make use in the process of your research methodology, or in the process of approaching your problems. Then after this, you need to discuss your time horizon. So the time horizon could be cross-sectional, in a situation whereby you just collect your data at one time and you do the analysis, or longitudinal, where you collect the data, for example, at the beginning of the semester, and you collect another one at the end of the semester. Then you compare the performance of the student between the beginning and after they have passed through some courses in the class. So you can discuss this and see, how they are related to your research approach. Then the last one here is techniques and procedures for data collection and data analysis. So you have to discuss the procedures for data collection. How did you collect your data? Was it done using by self-administered questionnaire, or somebody collect it for you? Or you do it through face-to-face, or you make use of internet. So all these things you have to discuss. Then at the same time, the last one is data analysis. Have you, how have you analyzed the data you have collected? Did you make use of SPSS? Did you make use of SEM? Did you make use of NVivo or Atlas TI? Or what kind of, method software did you use to do your analysis? And what kind of analysis did you perform on the data collected? So you have to discuss all those things. So briefly, let me just go through it one after the other here. And here, the research philosophy, which is the number one thing you have to discuss. The term research philosophy refers to the system of belief and assumptions about the development of knowledge. That is about the way in which you view the world. So, how did you perceive the world? If you say you want to carry out research to see the behavior of halal consumers in Malaysia. So what do you think it will happen after you have collected your data? How do you perceive that, okay, these people will actually give you the kind of data you need to carry out your research? And the kind of data you want to collect from them, is it going to be value free, or is it going to be value dependence in the case of ontology, epistemology, and theology. So this one is very important, and you should discuss it, especially when you are doing PhD. If you are doing masters, you also need to discuss it, but it's maybe just 1 page or 1.5 page should be okay for the masters. But for PhD, you have to do like maybe at least 2 to 3, 2 and above pages, so that people will actually understand. Because when you discuss your philosophical worldview, you also need to discuss in relation to ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. Then you also need to discuss with respect to the approach to theory development. So because of that, you have to do it in such that it's actually rich for everyone to understand what you are trying to do. Then at the same time, these assumptions shape all aspects of your research project. That is, by the assumptions you make, that maybe you belong to the positivist, then we will understand that this research is going to be quantitative, and we will understand the best way to approach your research. I mean, when we read your research, we know which approach, which concept, which terms, terminologies we expect from that research. So the five main philosophies or philosophical assumption or philosophical worldview are positivism, critical realism, interpretivism and postmodernism and pragmatism. So out of these five philosophical assumptions or philosophical worldview, three of them are actually popular that people from from every part of research or every part of disciplines, they make use of them, and these three are positivism, interpretivism, and pragmatism. So the first one, which is positivism, actually you carry out the research in order to make generalization. Then the second one, which is interpretivism, is a situation whereby you carry out the research to understand the experiences of the researchers, or I mean of the respondent, or to find out about the behavior of the respondent. And the last one is where you mix the both together, which is pragmatism. So, your research as a researcher, you are expected to discuss the research philosophy you have subscribed to in the course of conducting your research in detail. All all research philosophies make four major types of assumptions, which is ontology, epistemology, axiology, and methodology. Therefore, you should discuss your research philosophy in relation to the above assumptions and three main approaches of theory development, which is deduction, induction, and abduction. Then moving on to how to, I mean, to formulate your research design. Research design is what I've discussed before, and here also you can also see research design as the way research questions and research objective are actually operationalized into a research project. So the research design process involves a series of decisions that need to combine into coherent research projects. So research design will be informed by research philosophy. So your research philosophy is number one. You have to let us know. Then it will actually, affect the kind of research. I mean, the kind of research design that you are going to have. So here I say discuss your choice to use quantitative or quantitative method or both to create a model method, multi method, or mixed method research design. So you have to here when you discuss your research design, you have to discuss the choice you have made between the research designs, because research design will have quantitative, quantitative, and mixed method. So why do you prefer this and not the other? So you have to justify. Maybe if you are conducting quantitative research, for example, you can just say that the best approach to address the problem at hand is actually to make use of quantitative research. So there could be so many ways to justify why you have decided to use a particular research methodology or research approach. But of course, when you're using a mixed method research design, then the issue is a bit complicated, because when you use qualitative research design, you just focus on one aspect of it, and you discuss in relation to the justifications and the problem associated with that particular research design. But when you are mixing the two together, which is qualitative and quantitative, then you have to let us know how you are mixing them together. Do you consider qualitative and quantitative to be very, very good aspect of your research, or you just consider them to be elementary? I mean, something, like, okay, I'm making use of qualitative, but I just want to make use of quantitative to support my findings. You just need to let us know. And here, you need to start by let us know the kind of approach you are using to conduct your mixed method research design. Is it going to be concurrent, or is it going to be sequential? So if it is concurrent, then you have to justify, you have to let us know how you are mixing them together. Uh, Here, you see that qualitative and quantitative are the big aspect of your research, or you are using qualitative as biggest aspect of your research, while quantitative are just to support the findings from qualitative. Or is it qualitative research is just the simple aspect of your research that you first perform to find out about small things before you carry out the main research itself? Or are you combining them in such that both of them are just small aspect of the research the research is not really important in this case. So if you are using sequential, you also need to let us know how you are mixing them together. So discuss the time horizon of your research, that is cross-sectional or longitudinal, as well as your research strategy or strategies at this stage. Research strategy that you can use include survey questionnaire, narrative inquiry. In this case, this is qualitative. I mean, this is qualitative approach where you can make use of interview, or you are using archival or documentary research or case study. This one is like document review, or you are making use of case study, ethnography, action research, or grounded theory, and also in the case of qualitative research. So discuss how you minimize the errors related to the choosing strategies. So if you are choosing, for example, a survey questionnaire, you know that there are so many errors actually associated with a survey questionnaire. For example, the coverage error. This is a situation whereby you collect your data from very simple of the, I mean, simple aspect of the respondent, then you are saying you are making generalizations. So the coverage error then is there because you have covered, you know, very very limited aspect of the respondent, and you are claiming that you are making generalization. So the corporate error, how do you want to address it? You have to discuss. You have to discuss the sampling error. Uh, you have to discuss the sampling error, which is the situation whereby you use wrong approach to select your sample size. So you have to discuss how you want to minimize such situation. Maybe you are going to make use of appropriate sampling approach, I mean sampling procedures to arrive at sample size. Then at the same time, you need to discuss how you are going to minimize the measurement error in the situation whereby you have used wrong items in your questionnaire to collect the data, and you are reporting the data on the basis of for which it was not collected. So you have to also discuss how you are going to minimize. Maybe you will make use of appropriate items when you prepare your instrument. Then at the same time, non-response error. So in the situation whereby you want to collect data from maybe 500, but you cannot reach up to maybe up to 200. So how are you going to address such situations? So you need to discuss how you are going to minimize the errors actually associated with a particular research methodology. So in this case, discuss the criteria to assess the quality of the research with respect to the validity and reliability. That is, what actually you are trying to measure is what you are measuring. And the research is valid with respect to the internal validity, external validity, and so many other validities. So you need to discuss the research population as well. According to Sekran 2005, the terms of population refers to the entire group of people, event, or things of interest that the researcher wishes to investigate. So as a researcher, you should deem it fit to discuss the population that will be investigated or upon which the sample will be drawn in detail. So you need to discuss the sample, I mean, the populations where the samples will be drawn. So, for example, if you want to investigate the perception of students, the perception of IIUM students on the qualifications issued by IIUM. So, in that case, the population of your research are the students of IIUM. So, after that, then you need to justify how you are going to draw your sample size. Maybe in UIA, for example, maybe we have about maybe 30,000 students, for example. So how are you going to select the appropriate number of representative from this number of students? So you need to discuss in detail. So the sample size and sampling method. So these are another things after you have discussed the population, then you need to discuss the sample size you have drawn and the method of drawing them. So according to Tedley and you, the sample size, I mean sampling procedures, the sampling procedure you can use, you can choose from are probability if the total population is known. Let's say you want to carry out research about IIUM students, then you can simply go to respective authority to find out about the actual number of IIUM students. Then after that, you can make use of probability, sampling approach. Then if you don't know the number of IIUM students, then you can make use of purposive, uh, uh, you know, purposive sampling method, whereby you are going to consider only students of IIUM in your research because they are just, they are the people that you want to investigate in the course of carrying out your research. Then you also make use of convenience, sampling. So in a situation whereby you just like any student you find, you give it to them. Of course, they have to come from UIA as well. But the difference between the purposive and the convenience sampling is that the purposive is actually, you are drawing them because of the purpose of your research. Why the convenience is like, maybe they're just like, anyone you see, you give it to them. Anyone you see. But for example, if you want to carry out research on maybe 400 level students, so you can collect the data using purposes, or if you are carrying out your research on all IIUM students, you can use convenience. So it's just the difference between them is purely big. Of course, one is determined using the purpose of the research. The other one is just like convenience. Anyone I think is actually appropriate for that research, then you can make use of that. Then the last one is mixed method sampling. In a situation whereby you are mixing the two together, then you can do that. So discuss your choice in detail. Discuss your sample size, the criteria, and how you have arrived at your sample size, and factors that have that have influenced your sample size decision. So you have to discuss all these things in detail. So some of the factors that can do that, that can influence your sample size, decision are the variation of the populations in a situation whereby the population is not the same. You are collecting data here, you're also collecting data in another country. So so in some cases, this is the variation of the population, the accuracy required, the quality, the how accurate is the data you are going to collect. So you want to make sure that, okay, you want to collect 500 data and you actually target that particular 500. So this will affect the kind of sample size you are going to make use of. Then the time available. So in a situation whereby you want to do your master's, but you are told that you have just 3 years to complete your research. So in that case, you know that you have time limitations. So you have to do whatever you want to do within short period of time. So in that case, maybe you can make use of purposive, or you can make use of convenience sampling design and the cost of sampling. So you also need to consider the cost when you are doing that. So building the research instrument. Of course, when you want to carry out research, there are so many instruments you can use to collect your data. So you have to discuss how your research instruments were planned for for data collection. So popular research instruments are survey questionnaire. So how did you discuss your survey questionnaire? How did you prepare your survey questionnaire? And how are you making use of that questionnaire to collect your data? So you need to discuss the interview as well. How did you come across the questions you asked to your respondent, and how are you going to make use of them? So you also need to discuss about a focus group. You need to discuss, if you are using, experiments, you need to discuss. If you are using document review, you need to discuss, or direct observation. So these are the popular research instruments you can make use of. And a particular one you are making use of, you have to discuss in detail. And if you are mixing methods together in a situation where you are mixing both questionnaire and at the same time interview together, then you also need to discuss how you have built your instrument. Or in this case, you have to discuss one after the other. You discuss how you have prepared your quantitative, for example, then after that, followed by the quantitative. So you have to discuss all these things in detail. So for example, how was your questionnaire structured? Where did you source the items used to measure your research variables? Was it validated before use? Did you use face validity, or what kind of validity did you use? So all sort of questions like this should be really answered when you are writing your how you build your research instrument. So when you are preparing your interview questions, either structured or unstructured or semi-structured interview, so you have to have some things that you have to follow when you want to do that. So if you have decided to make use of interviews, then you need to identify the sample. So how many people do you think you are going to interview? But when you conduct qualitative research, the focus is on the saturating point, where you discover that everyone is talking about the same things. So if everyone are talking about the same thing, then it is time for you to stop your data collection. So, but of course, you have to have it in mind that maybe you want to interview 10 individuals. But in the process of reaching 10, maybe you discover that when you reached seven respondents or seven interviewees, then the seventh one is also talking about the same thing that number four or number three have discussed. Or number eight is also talking about the same thing that number two or number three have discussed. So in this case, there's no more information for you to get in the market, then you can just okay, stop your data collection in that case. So when you do qualitative research, what you are targeting is the point of saturation. But of course, at the same time, you need to have some number in mind that you want to interview when you want to when you are planning your research, for example. Then at the same time, you have to draw up this a set of questions that seems appropriate to what you need to find out from the interviewees. So uh, after you have identified the sample size you want to collect your data from, then the next thing for you is to develop the questions that you are going to make use to collect your data from them. So if you're making use of semi-structured uh, interviews or semi-structured questions, in that case, you can just have the main questions, then you can use probe to to get more information from the respondent. Let's say, for example, you say, okay, can you please tell me your experience in IIUM? Then you say, my experience is both sides. Sometimes they treated me very well. Sometimes they treated me very bad. Then in that case, we know that you have two types of experiences. Then I can probe you that okay, you say okay, they have treated me good in this situation. Then I can ask you what kind of what actually happened when they treated you good and what actually happened when they treated you bad. So to get more information, you can use probe. So in that case, but of course, you can also use just structured interview whereby you come to me, you interview me, but you never ask me anything after you have asked the question. For example, you say, can you tell me the challenges you face as a lecturer in IIUM, for example? Then I just tell you, okay, my challenges are this. Then after that, you move on to another question. You don't probe me to get more information about that. So you need to draw up a set of questions that you are going to make use to collect your data from the interviewees. Then the number three here is to do start with some basic closed questions. For example, I can just come to you and say, please tell me about yourself. Like, what is your name, for example, also. So this is just like closed question, but simple one, but you are moving from simplest to difficult aspect of the interview. So you don't just come to me and say, what is your challenges? What are the challenges you face in IIUM, for example, as a lecturer? So you have to start from beginning by saying, okay, please, can you tell me about yourself? Uh, how do you perceive people around you? So, you can just start from that basic aspect. Then after that, you can have, so many questions and difficult questions after that. So do not ask leading questions. You don't ask questions that, that will give respondent or interviewees the hint about what kind of information you are seeking to get from them. Let's say you come to me and you say, okay, I know your name. I know Haruna Babatunde Jayeoba, I know you are from Nigeria. I know you are from UAE. Please tell me about yourself. Then, of course, you have said everything about me already. So I don't have anything to talk to you about myself or again. So you have discussed. So you don't have to ask the leading questions. You have to ask questions and allow the interviewees or the respondent to tell you what they feel they want to tell you. Then try your instrument out with a colleague. So when you prepare your instrument, you can give it to your colleagues. I mean, you can interview your colleagues and see what kind of responses you get from the colleagues. If your colleagues told you that this your questions doesn't make sense to me, then you know that you have to prepare another question. But if your colleagues told you that, okay, the questions are actually easy for me to understand, then I can answer. Then you know that you have questions already, then you can go ahead to collect your data. Then you need to do pilot study as well. So you can use your questionnaire to ask some people about some things, and after that, you can see how you are going to refine the questions you have before and see the genuinity in how it is going to engage the respondent, whether the respondent will be able to answer them, or whether they are not going to answer them. You will be able to understand after you have conducted pilot study. Then you also need to contact your interviewees and ask for permission. So when you want to interview people, you need to send message to them, or maybe you send email to them, or maybe you call them that, please, I want to interview you, and I need your permission to do that. Also, or maybe you want to record as well. You also need to get permission from them. So you need to do all these things before you can go ahead. Then after that, you also need to carry out interviews and keep notes or tape the interview section. So if you go to the interview, they used to say the most foolish interviewers are those who actually rely on their memory. So if you go to the respondent, you actually need to go with your pen by writing some things down, or you need to record if they give you permission to do so. But you don't just depend on your memory that, okay, you can just say everything. When I get back to my office, I'm going to remember everything you have said. So that is foolish. They used to say the most foolish guy in data collection are those who depend on their memory when they collect qualitative data. So if you want to do that, you have to record, or you jot down the important information that you got from them. Then after that, you need to transcribe. So if you have collected your data, you need to transcribe. Then after that, you need to do thematic analysis uh, on the data you have collected. You need to analyze. Then you need to compare your findings with other findings in the feed. Then if you are using a questionnaire, then you know that you need to identify your research questions. You can do that by looking at the items from other questionnaire, and you can use those items to build up your questionnaire. Then also you need to identify the sample size. The sample, where are you going to collect your research? You don't start the research before you think about where are you going to collect your data. So you need to think, you need to identify where are going to be the respondent of the research. You need to also draw up a list of appropriate questions and try them out with a colleague. So this is just like pilot study, or maybe something like, just, okay, you give it to your colleagues to see and give you feedback about what you have developed, whether they are good or they are not good, or maybe you need to refine them a bit, or you need to correct them a bit. So at the same time, you need to do pilot study. So carry out pilot study, especially if you are not that expert in the preparation of questionnaire. So you need to perform pilot studies. In some cases, also you do that just to see what the reactions are going to be after you have collected the real data. So if you have that opportunity, why not? You should do the pilot study to see what the reactions will be after you have collected the actual data. Then at the same time, ensure questions are well laid out, and it is clear how to score them. So if you are using questionnaire, for example, then you have to like, okay, please, you need to tell them to tick or to circle or to delete the questions you have selected. So you need to make it clear what you want them to do. You don't just give them questionnaire whereby they don't know whether to circle or they don't know whether to cross or to tick or how to address. So you need to ensure questions are well laid out and ensure that it is clear on how to score the items you have included in that questionnaire. So you also need to ensure that questions are not leading and confusing, just like what I've said before. You need to ask the respondent the appropriate questions or using the items that you think it will be clear for them to do. Then you need to code the questionnaire. When you prepare your instrument, it is also good for you at the same time to prepare your SPSS, how you are going to code the data you have collected, so that immediately you get the data, you can transfer the data into the SPSS. Then at the same time, you need to gain permission to use a questionnaire from your respondent. That is why when you are developing questionnaire, the first page of the questionnaire will be the introductory page. And there you need to ensure that you told them, assure them of their, privacy and also seek permission that the kind of data you want to collect are going to be used only for research purpose. It's not going to be used for something else. So you need to giving them the assurance that the data you are going to collect is for research, and you have gotten permission by saying that, and they fill it up after that. And then at the same time, you need to ensure that you ensure you collect in as many as possible. So if you have opportunity to collect as many data as possible, why not? Just go ahead to collect. It will be useful for you when you do your analysis. But of course, if you don't have the capacity to collect more, you can just limit it to the number of those you can collect. And then do the follow up if you get a small return. So if you discover that your respondents are not turning up in filling out the questionnaire, then you need to get back to them like, please help me to complete my questionnaire, and all sort of things like that, just to get them reminded. Then the last one is to analyze statistically. You can use different kind of analytical software to do that. Then after this is you need to discuss also, the data collection and data management. Discuss how your data were collected in detail, e.g. you have used, survey questionnaire or interview. How did you invite your participant? Did you use email to invite them, or you just meet them and give it to them? Or how did you invite them? Were the instruments administered or by someone else? So how did you distribute the questionnaire? So you need to discuss here. Were data collected through face-to-face or how? So you need to discuss whether you give it to somebody to do that for you, or you make use of internet, or how you do that. You need to discuss from whom were your data collected and where. So if you say you are studying high IIUM students, then you know that you have to discuss that your data were collected from IIUM students who, who are actually residing in Gumba campus, or maybe from Gumba campus, Gambon campus, and Quantum campus. You just need to, discuss from where you have collected that. So discuss how you have managed the data collection with respect to arrangement of the data. Okay, when you collect your data, you need to arrange, you need to, you know, fix out the incomplete data, something we call missing data. So how did you approach them? You need to also discuss. You need to discuss about data cleaning, and you need to discuss about data imputation. So all these things should be well discussed in this section. Then you may wish to discuss how you have pre-tested research instruments and conducted pilot study after this section. So after you have discussed the data collection and management, then you can discuss how you have, whether you conducted whether you pre-tested the instrument or you conducted pilot study. So you need to actually justify it. E.g., pretested by internal or external expert review. For example, if you're from INHAT, which is International Institute for Halal and Research Training, if you're from here, okay, if you when I mean when you develop your research instrument and you give it to some of us here to do that, I mean to see whether what you have prepared are actually good, then that could be considered to be internal. But if you identify somebody outside, maybe from industry, then you think that okay, they have so much information about what you are doing as well, then you give it to them. Then in that case, those people could be considered to be external. So how many internal and how many external you make use of in this case? How many PhD students, if you are making use of anyone, and how many lecturers or your supervisor or your whatever. You just need to discuss all these in detail here. Uh, then the procedure for data analysis, I think we are coming close to the end already. Discuss how you have analyzed the data collected. Okay, use and discuss with respect to method of data analysis and compare it with other competing method. That is, when you make use of one particular method of data analysis, let's say you make use of ANOVA, then you can also discuss why you are making use of ANOVA, why not a second order invariance analysis. Because second order invariance analysis is doing the same work as what ANOVA will also do. So you can discuss why you have decided to use ANOVA instead of second order invariance analysis, or why you have made use of second order invariance analysis instead of ANOVA. So you can discuss these in detail. So assumptions and restrictions associated with the method. You have to discuss the assumptions and restrictions because each of the analysis we perform has gotten, assumptions and restrictions. So you have to discuss how you have addressed the restrictions and how you have made, you have supported the assumptions of that particular analysis. Then you need to discuss the software used, what you have used that software for. You need to discuss. So the popular software when you do the analysis, the popular method of analysis when you collect your data and you want to do that is ANOVA, regression, exploratory factor analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, structural equation modeling, thematic analysis. So these are the common, analysis you can perform when you collect quantitative and qualitative data from the respondent. And some notable or popular software that are actually making use by the academicians are SPSS, AMOS, PLS, eViews, Tata, MV for Atlas TI, etc. Even here, you can also include Excel because in most cases also we make use of Excel to do our analysis. Then the next one is thank you everyone for listening to me. Thank you for your patience.
All right. Alhamdulillah. Jazakumullah khair. We thank you for this wonderful presentation, Doctor. We can only but
Thank you.
pray that Almighty Allah reward you in manifolds. And we pray also
Um,
that what you have given us in terms of presentation be much beneficial for us in our research here and in the future. Doctor, sir, we have some questions being penned down by some of our participants. I hope
okay.
you can give us some time to answer them. We have about seven. Hopefully, maybe some other ones, some other participants will have questions to ask. Maybe after this one written down, they can ask directly from you. Can I proceed with the questions, sir?
Please go ahead.
Okay, alhamdulillah. Okay, the first question is, in case where a mixed method is being chosen, does it mean that in
Okay.
every question we must formulate different, we must use different research methodology? If you are using a mixed mode method, for every research question, is it that we are going to use different research methodology? I hope you understand. You get the question, sir.
Okay, if I can understand what the question is talking about, that if we claim to have used mixed method, uh, do we have to discuss do we have to discuss research different research methodology?
Yeah,
And So if you claim that you have made use of mixed method research design, you are actually telling me that you are making use of qualitative and quantitative research in the context of research methodology. So you have to discuss each of them in detail. Why you have decided to mix them together, you have to discuss. Maybe you want to you want to make use of qualitative research to find out about the behavior of the respondent after you have collected data to see the relationship between the variables or to see their perceptions about a particular issue. So you need to discuss why you have you have mixed the two together, and you have to discuss the two in detail.
So it means that each research question in mixed mode will actually come along with different research methodology. Is it?
Yes, it will come with because we have two types of research methodology, and the third one is mixed method.
Yeah.
So if you say you are making use of mixed method, that shows that you are mixing a method of qualitative methodology and method in the quantitative research methodology. Let's say, for example, you make use of questionnaire to collect data, and in that case, you know that you are going to perform some kind of analysis on it, and you make use of interview, I mean, to collect another data. So in that case, you need to discuss each, sequentially, because that is why in mixed method research, I have mentioned that you need to discuss whether you are making use of sequential research design or you are making use of concurrent research design. The sequential research design is a situation whereby you collected data for qualitative research for the first time, then you follow up by the quantitative research design, and it could be vice versa as well. So you need to discuss in details actually.
Right. Okay. Oh, I hope the questioner is okay with that response, inshallah. Okay. The second question is to measure the perception and awareness of consumers regarding a product, perhaps maybe for something like an halal food. Can we apply quantitative research method if you are trying to measure the perception of a particular product? Is it possible to apply quantitative research methodology in
Uh,
that regard?
okay, okay. Researching perception is actually quantitative research. If you want to find out about the perception of people, because perception, you can measure the perception using Likert scale. 5 Likert scale, for example, or maybe 7 Likert scale or 9 Likert scale, how many you wish to use. So you can make use of that, and perception is actually related to quantitative research. So it is possible to make use of quantitative research. But let's say you want to find out about their experiences after purchasing a halal food, for example, then you can make use of quantitative research.
Thank you so much. Okay. The third question is research methodology and research design the same thing? Research methodology and research design, are they the same thing?
Okay, research methodology, as I've mentioned, is the way you wish to address problems. Of course, if you want to write research, the number one thing for you to do is to identify the problem that you want to solve. So after you have identified the problem, then you need to let us know which approach you want to use to solve that problem. Is it going to be quantitative, whereby you will interview people to solve that problem, or is it going to be quantitative, whereby you actually maybe you give them you test the perception about the problem you wish to solve, or is he going to you just that is just the methodology per se. The methodology is just the way you wish to address the problem you want to solve, why the research design is the way you want to structure the research methodology, how you want to discuss the research methodology. We know that when you are writing your research methodology, number one thing you have to discuss is to discuss about the philosophical worldview. Then after that, you need to discuss the research design itself. Then you discuss the data collection, you discuss the population. So this is actually the research design, how you wish to structure your research methodology.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for the clarification. Okay. The next question asks that I think this person is from engineering, College of Engineering. So you have mentioned about three types of research methodology. So the questioner is now asking, can we apply these three types of research methodology in engineering research too, or are they applicable only to social sciences?
Yeah, you can. Of course, we have three types of research design, but in actual fact, we have two types because the third one is mixing both together, mixing the number one and number two together. Because the first one is qualitative, for example, the second one is quantitative, and the third one is mixing qualitative and quantitative, which is actually doable in every aspect of discipline. Think no matter where you are coming from, whether you are coming from social science, you are coming from applied science, you are coming from pure science, you can make use of all of that. It's possible.
Okay. So regardless of the field of study, the three research
Yes,
methodology can be applied. All right. Thank
yes,
you.
yes.
Yes, thank you, sir. Okay, there's another question here. It says that can we use convenience sampling for inferential statistical analysis? Convenience sampling for inferential statistical analysis. Is it possible?
Yeah, yeah, it's possible because what we do when we collect our data is to make inferences that okay, this actually supports the the hypothesis you have developed before, or it does not support it. So the approach to collect your data is just one of them is convenience is convenience approach, and you can make use of purposive or probability approach. So any of them is possible, but of course, when you are making use of convenience, people or the examiners actually want you to make some level of justification why you have decided to use that, because in actual fact, they prefer we usually prefer the use of probability method, because the probability approach is where you have to use, scientific approach to determine the number of people to be called into the research. So, of course, you can make use of convenience, but you have to justify why you are making use of it.
Okay. All right. I hope the questioner is satisfied with that response. All right. Thank you, sir. Okay, we are sorry for taking your time. Someone
It's
asked.
okay.
Okay. All right. Alhamdulillah. Someone asked. What is the minimum amount of sample that we can have for quantitative method? Okay. Which
Okay.
okay, sorry. The question is which theory should I use to determine the minimum amount of sample for quantitative research? Is that a theory that back up the number of samples we have to use for any kind of research?
Of course, when you want to determine the number of respondents to be participated in your research, of course, you don't talk about theory in that case. You only talk about the methodological approach to select your sample size. So here you don't talk about theory. You only talk about theory where when you want to use that theory as a basis of that research. But of course, this one, there are so many approach that you can use to determine the number of respondents to be taken, I mean, to be consulted in the course of doing your research. And one of them is the one given by here, here and et al. They say that if you are making use of if you have certain number of variables, then you should have certain number of sample size. If you are making use of these, if you have certain number of maybe seven variables, you should have maybe at least 200 or 150 participants. If you have maybe seven to eight variables in your research, you have about 300. And we have so many assumptions in that regard, and there are also mathematical assumptions on how to arrive at that. So you can make use of that to arrive at how many numbers to be included in the research.
All right, thank you, sir. There's a related question to that. The person asked, what is the minimum, maximum, the minimum and the maximum number of respondents that one can have in either qualitative or quantitative research? Is there a minimum or and the maximum?
Okay. The reason why you need to have more number of respondents is just the situation where you want to conduct. Maybe you want to make use of exploratory factor analysis, or you want to make use of SEM, because in such situation, we are talking about iteration levels. So the iteration level sometimes will not generate if you don't have required number of respondents. Of course, usually, if you are conducting quantitative research, the methodological researchers have suggested indicated that if you have about 368, then you are going to have the same result if you collect your data also from 1,000 or more. So the benchmark there is that at least try to have 368. If you don't have that, then you can have at least maybe 200 and above, and you can say that you want to generalize a bit. But if you are using qualitative, I've mentioned the other time that when it comes to qualitative, we're actually talking about the point of saturation. Of course, you have to have it in mind the number of people you want to interview. But in a situation whereby you find out that everyone is just talking about the same thing, then you have reached the point of saturation, and you don't have to go further in that case. I think that is all.
All right, thank you, sir. We have just two more questions listed here. But the first one is split into two. The very first segment of that question is for a questionnaire which is meant to be self-administered. Let's assume the researcher sent the questionnaire through maybe the head of a department to the subordinates. Can we assume that the questionnaire is still self-administered if it is sent through the head to the subordinate for the subordinate to fill? Do we say it is still self-administered questionnaire?
Okay, it's not a self-administered questionnaire, because the self-administered questionnaire is a situation whereby you meet face to face, and you give it to them to fill it for you. So if you don't meet face to face, you meet through somebody, then you have to report that the data were collected using the authority from these institutions or so. So that is not considered to be self-administered. The self-administered has to be face-to-face, whereby you hand over your questionnaire to the respondent to fill it for you, and you collect it from there.
All right, all right. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. Then, the second part of the question is, given this particular period, which is the COVID-19 era, majority of researchers are using Google Form to do their data. The questioner asks, can we use the reason why we have used Google Form, or we shouldn't mind?
Okay, Google Form is one of reliable way to collect your data. So you just need to point out the approach. I mean, how you have collected your data. Everyone realize we understand. Of course, we are the I mean methodologists are still talking about the quality of the data you collected using online. But at the same time, we have all appreciate and engage in using online to collect our data. So there is no point to be scared about when you are using online. Online is a generally accepted ways of data collection.
All right, okay, thank you. Well, the last one penned down here, we might open the floor so for those who want to ask directly. The last one penned down here is that if you're using a particular theory for your research, let's assume institutional theory, and it has certain some variables, is it allowed in your own research to take part of those variables for your research, or we must use the whole of the variables in that theory?
Okay, when we are using a theory, we are actually talking about theory extension or theory modification. uh, it sometimes you don't have to use the theory the way it is. You can modify it a bit to suit your research, and in that case, you may include more variables because maybe I mean, the theory developers are maybe, for example, they are coming from the West, and they do not have some items from Islamic point of view. Then you want to incorporate Islamic point of view into it. Let's say you are talking about employee engagement, for example. People who actually carry out research on employee engagement in the West, they don't have anything like amana. They don't have anything like amana in their variables. So you are coming from Islamic point of view, then you want to incorporate amana into it. So it's okay because you are actually extending and modifying the theory. So it's okay to do that.
So it means we can amend or probably expand that a particular so not
Yes,
necessarily
yes,
the theory as it were. All right.
yes.
Okay. Thank you so much. These are the questions I have penned down. I don't know within our participants, anyone who wishes to ask directly. How do we determine data? I'm having another question here, sir. How do we determine which data analysis is best suited for your research? How do we determine which data analysis is best suited for your research? Okay.
Okay. The time you are preparing the research instrument, you should also be planning about how you are going to analyze. What we discover is that many students they want to collect their data, but they never plan on how they are going to analyze the data. So the next thing for you to do when you are preparing your instrument is for you to also think about how you are going to do the analysis. Let's say you are making use, or you are preparing the questionnaire, for example. So the time you are preparing the questionnaire, you should know the kind of variables you want to include in the questionnaire. Let's say you include some variables to be used as as independent variables, and you include some to be used as maybe mediating variable, and you have dependent variable. So in this case, you know that at the end of the day, you are going to make use of structural equation modeling simply because you have mediating variable. So if you don't have mediating variable, you just have independent and dependent variable. Then you can just like make use of multiple regressions and some other things and cool like that. So the time you are actually preparing is the time you have to determine the kind of analysis you are going to perform as well.
All right. So thank you so much. It means the numbers of variables we have based on dependent, independent, we have moderated, then it's going to determine some of our research analysis. Alhamdulillah, jazakumullah khairan. I don't think we have any question. Does anyone in the floor has question to ask directly? Okay.
Thank you very much, Mr. President.
Okay, you're welcome, sir. I would like to thank you on behalf of the whole NISCOM team. NISCOM is the Nigerian Student Community in Malaysia IIUM branch. We thank you so much, Doctor, for taking out of your time and to share out of your pool of knowledge with us. We pray Almighty
Thank
Allah
you, sir.
continue to bless you immensely and also to be with you and family. I also use this medium to thank the participants who have joined us. Without you over there, we can't be here. We have all made this workshop a successful one. It is our wish that in the nearest future we have quality researchers who can actually change the world for best, inshallah. As the logo of IIM is leading the world, inshallah, leading the way, inshallah. So we thank all participants for joining and for their cooperation and for their understanding. It has been a wonderful section without disturbance or interference from any one of us. Jazakumullah khairan. I would also like to thank the head of the team, which is Brother Mahfouz Ahmad, for the time he has taken to bring about this planning. May Almighty Allah continue to be with him. Inshallah, Bibratillah, we are calling it a close. From me to you, inshallah, we would actually contact us if you have some other workshop for ourselves. He has mentioned some of the ways we can analyze our data in terms of SPSS, Atlas D, MVO. Hopefully, we're working with some other researchers to come up with some training programs on how to use some of these softwares. May Allah make it easy for us. So, from myself to yourself, I say Salaam alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you, everyone.
You are welcome, sir. Okay.